Welcome to my house and welcome to chapter 5, the chapter on consciousness. So when we're talking about consciousness, we're looking at an awareness of our existence, our sensations, our cognition. So we know we exist, we are aware of our feelings, we're aware of our thoughts, but this can depend, it can be more or less aware depending on what type of consciousness, and we're going to go through those things. So William James talked about a stream of consciousness, that we have an inflow of ideas, of senses coming in, and this is the sensory memory that we'll talk about in chapter 7, that there's constant information coming in, and then we focus on what's important. So what function does consciousness serve? It enables us to be higher order beings. We can think, we can philosophize, we can create artwork. Also, at the basic level, it helps us to survive. If you're not aware of your environment, you'll end up walking off a cliff, for instance. Now, consciousness, normal consciousness, is not just one part of the brain. It's actually many different parts of the brain activated, but our brain likes that gestalt. It likes the whole. So it takes individual things, individual thoughts in our brains, individual activations, and combines them to form a sense of consciousness. Similar to the picture here of the lights, they're individual bulbs, but together it forms a pattern, and we see it as a whole arrow. So there's different states of consciousness: sleeping, dreaming, hypnosis, meditation, drug-induced, and then culturally based, which is really interesting. We'll get into that in a few slides. So there are 5 stages of sleep: 1, 2, 3, 4, and REM. Notice that REM looks very similar to being awake. You're still asleep. It's actually the deepest type of sleep, but the brain acts like it's awake. And this is where you're going to see dreaming, the most vivid dreaming. Stages 3 and 4, there will be some dreaming, but not as vivid as REM. So these waves are from an EEG, or an electroencephalogram. And this is just measuring the electrical activity of the brain. So in stage 1, we call it hypnagogic sleep. You aren't aware of being asleep here until you nod off and, all of a sudden you realize you fell asleep in class. This is also when you jerk. It's called a hypnagogic jerk. Stage 2, you start seeing these little blips of electricity called sleep spindles, and basically it's just, as far as we know, it's a transition to stages 3 and 4. And this is when the waves start to slow down, what we call delta waves, or slow wave sleep. This is when sleep paralysis will start, so the body will start producing chemicals that keep your muscles paralyzed, so that when you get into REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep, you don't act out your dreams. So you see here, these are the stages of sleep. So all through the night, you go up and down throughout the stages. Stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hopefully up to REM. But it can be disturbed. You know, you can get through some of the stages and you wake up, or something slightly disturbs you and you don't wake up completely, but it pulls you out of deep sleep. The more disturbance, the more issues you're going to have. Now notice each REM cycle gets longer the longer you sleep, which is why a full night's rest is important. And then also each REM cycle is about an hour and a half long. Well, it takes an hour and a half between REM cycles. Now, if you're not getting enough REM sleep, then you're sleep deprived. Most of you, 2/3 of you, are not getting enough sleep. Some of you have a phobia, a fear of sleeping, which is somnophobia. There's also nomophobia, which is the fear of not having your cell phone while you're asleep, that you're going to miss out on something on Facebook or Twitter or Vine or something like that, or Snapchat. Luckily, we have the ability to recover from sleep deprivation. So when we are REM deprived, our brain will put us into extra REM sleep the next time that we're able to sleep. You can take alcohol and sleeping pills to get more sleep. It does help get you into sleep, but it prevents you from getting into the deep wave sleep, the stages 3, 4, and REM, which is where you feel energized and recharged. So it's not a long-term solution. Of course, we all know the effects of sleep deprivation: have a hard time paying attention, car crashes, visual motor tasks like surgery. You don't want a tired surgeon. Your mood deteriorates, your body suffers increased cortisol production, which is a stress hormone, and that tears apart the muscles of your body, that puts weight on your belly. All sorts of really bad effects. Decreases your ability to remember things and to learn. So sleep deprivation, not good for you. If you go too long with sleep, it can literally drive you insane. You start hallucinating. Your personality can change permanently if you're sleep deprived long enough. And then at some point it can kill you. Okay, so why do we sleep? There's 3 different theories: evolutionary, restorative, and facilitating learning. So evolutionary theory says it helps us to survive, that it keeps us asleep during the most dangerous time of the day, which is the night. So again, everything with evolution is hard to prove because you can't go back to Stone Age man, centuries and centuries, millennia ago, and see if it did help or not. So we can't prove it. It's a theory. It's an interesting idea. It also doesn't explain why some animals do stay awake at night. Other predators, like lions, for instance, why do they hunt at night and we hunt if you hunt during the day? Hard to explain. Restorative theory says that we heal and we energize during sleep, which is true. Although there are a handful of people, literally like maybe 5 people in the world, that never sleep. So it doesn't completely explain that too. If it's necessary for us to live, which for most of us it is, why do some people not need to do it? Now, facilitating learning theory says that sleep helps us to learn. It helps us to remember. While we're asleep, our brain cells, our neurons, are connecting and disconnecting according to what we've learned during the day and in the past as well, but a lot during the day. So we learn better when we sleep. If you are sleep deprived, like we said before, you don't learn well. So everybody wants to know about dreaming. Dreaming is a state of consciousness. You do have conscious awareness, but it's an altered form. It's not like normal consciousness. You are aware, you're feeling, you're thinking, but obviously it's very different than normal consciousness. So what triggers particular dreams? We don't know. We're going to say that a lot in this chapter. We don't know. We know certain foods trigger dreams, certain temperatures, like if it's hot in your room, you're more likely to have a nightmare. If it's cold, more likely to have a good dream. If you're stressed, you're more likely to dream about what's stressing you, but it's hard to say exactly. Dreaming does seem in some cases to help you solve problems. So people think through their issues while they're asleep. Some people invent things. Some people have even written books in their sleep, and they wake up and just get it all jotted down as best as they can, and they write a best-selling novel. So dreaming it's very interesting, but it's hard to exactly say why this is going on. Again, we don't know. Why do we dream? There's many stories of dreams foretelling the future, of God, or some being coming to speak to somebody in a dream. Could that be true? Sure, I don't know. I can't prove to you that it's not. And every culture throughout all of history has stories like this, so it's possible. It could just be random stuff going on in the brain. It could be meaningful. It could be all of the above. Freud believed that dreams were wish fulfillment. So we have these unconscious desires that in some cases are not socially acceptable, like murdering somebody or having sex with your neighbor when you're married, having an affair. But dreams are a safe way to fulfill these wishes so that it doesn't cause a psychosis or a neurosis. It doesn't give you a mental illness. So Freud looked at dreams and he said there's 2 levels. There's manifest content and latent content. Manifest content is the obvious content, is what you see. So if you dream about, I'm trying to think of something that he would say. You dream about your teeth falling out. Okay, here's a good one. So your teeth fall out in your dreams. Anybody had that dream? Freud would say that the manifest content or the obvious content was your teeth falling out. That's obvious. That's what you see. But underlying it, the latent symbolic content it symbolized a loss of power. So you feel like you're out of control in life. So if you ever have that dream, you know what it means, according to Freud at least. It's hard to say if he's right or not. But Freud said the way that he could prove that wish fulfillment was what was happening in a dream was that if you try not to think about something, then it pops into your mind. So like right now, don't think about a white polar bear. Obviously, you're all thinking about a white polar bear. So if you are suppressing certain desires, Freud believed that they had to come out, they had to express themselves in some way, and dreams were a safe way of expressing them. Now, the boring theory is the activation synthesis hypothesis, and this just says that there's random activations in the brain, and because the brain likes patterns, that Gestalt idea, it takes all these random activations and creates a story with it, and that's all a dream is. So, that's boring. I don't like to believe that one, but who knows. Also, dreaming helps to edit neural connections. This is the learning aspect, facilitating learning theory. So, neural connections are deleted, they're connected, and it could be that dreaming is a result of these connections and disconnections. All right, so the chemistry of sleep. Acetylcholine is released when light starts to increase. So as the sun rises, or if you have an alarm clock that mimics the sun rising, it will activate your brain to start releasing acetylcholine to wake you up. Sleeping pills block acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. And that's one of the reasons why it helps you to stay asleep. There's also, usually there's mixed chemicals in there. So there's a chemical to get you to sleep, but there's also a chemical to help you stay awake. And that would be, acetylcholine would be the one, I see something out my window and I'm distracted. So sleeping pills get you to sleep, and then they block the chemical acetylcholine that wakes you up so that you don't wake up during the night. Melatonin is a chemical that puts you to sleep. So it's actually a hormone. As the light decreases, your brain will start producing melatonin. And if you've ever taken melatonin, if it works for you, it helps you to sleep really well. There doesn't seem to be any danger in taking melatonin, so if you have insomnia, go for it, try it. You don't need a lot for it to work. It will only work if you're deficient in melatonin, which a lot of us are because we live unhealthy lifestyles, so it might help you. You can also do things like, as you're starting to get ready for bed, maybe an hour before, you start dimming all the lights. You can see I have like these kerosene oil lamps, so I actually don't use any electricity besides for my computer and a few other gizmos. So when it gets dark, I just use oil lamps, and it's a nice ambiance, and it helps your brain to get into relaxation sleep mode and start producing melatonin. And so because I have terrible insomnia, little tricks like that help me to not have insomnia. So I can usually get to sleep within half hour to an hour, whereas it used to be 4 or 5 hours easy, I would be awake. All right, so circadian rhythm. This is your 24-hour cycle. Now it's actually, if it wasn't for the sun, we would be on like a 25.5-hour cycle. But because the sun regulates us with 24 hours, the light changes help us to stay at 24 hour. If you were in a place where it was light all the time or dark all the time and there was no clock, then you would be on a 25.5-hour cycle. So just a little bit of trivia there for you. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, say that 10 times fast, is the part of your brain that registers changes in light and tells it to release acetylcholine or to release melatonin. If you imagine a chart, okay, so you wake up, let's see, let me think this through. I usually draw this out, so it's a little hard to think about it on the fly. So, all right, you've got your baseline of, your little chart here. So you wake up and your cortisol spikes. So high cortisol helps you to wake up. Not like extremely high, but just normal high cortisol. And then as you go through the day, it starts to dip down again. And by 2, 3 o'clock, cortisol is pretty low. Not as low as when you're asleep, but it's pretty low, which is why after lunch you tend to be tired. And then it goes up again until 6 o'clock. And then it starts dipping down again, so that by the time you get to sleep at 9 or so, your cortisol level is low and you're feeling pretty tired. Now around 10 or 11, if you stay awake, there will be another spike in cortisol. If you go to sleep, it doesn't happen. But this is why you'll notice like 8, 9 o'clock, you're so exhausted, you want to go to bed, but you push through to study for an exam or to get a paper done, and suddenly around 10, 11 o'clock at night, you're ready to, party. You're all super energetic. That's because you had a cortisol spike. Now that's really hard on your adrenal glands, which produce cortisol. So especially if you have a health issue or if you have adrenal fatigue, then you want to be going to bed at least by 10 to try to avoid that cortisol spike. All right, so I talked about this. Our circadian rhythm is actually 25 and a half hours, although the sun keeps it at 24. And then shift work. So this is when sometimes you go to work at 8 o'clock at night, sometimes you go to work at 8 in the morning. It changes all the time. It's really hard on the body. The body can't keep up with all of these shifts, all of these changes in the sleep-wake cycle. It takes a few weeks for the brain to readjust to a new cycle, which is why jet lag can bother people so much. And this has resulted in disasters like 3 Mile Island, which I will try to put on a video on here for you. But it was a nuclear meltdown that happened in New York. Chernobyl, same issue, meltdown because people being tired. There's been times when cops were shot because they fall asleep in their car and somebody can ambush them. So planned naps are really helpful. Sometimes cops will, like if you see 2 cops parked together at night, it might be because one is taking a nap and the other one's watching them, which is a good thing because you don't want grumpy cops. Remember the sleep deprivation slide. Naps are really important, and they can really help with sleep deprivation. All right, now some people have issues sleeping. I know I'm one of those people. So there can be some major issues. Night terrors. This is one of them. So you go to sleep, and it usually happens in young boys. They tend to grow out of it. Girls are less likely to have it, but it can happen. But young boys is most common. So it's sort of like a nightmare, but it's really bad. I mean, screaming and throwing themselves around and just acting terrified, but you can't wake them up. These are different than nightmares. So nightmares you can be woken up from, and then you also remember them. Night terrors, you wake up and you're like, why is everybody upset? I don't remember. I have no idea what happened, which is probably better. It's hard to say if they're really afraid, if they're really experiencing something, because when they wake up, they say they don't remember anything. So it could just be a weird body thing that's happening, and it doesn't involve their real emotions at all. Whereas nightmares, definitely. I mean, we've all had nightmares. Some people have nightmares so bad they develop somnophobia, where they're afraid to go to sleep. Interesting tidbit, nightmare refers to a horse, okay? A mare is a female horse. So there was a Celtic goddess named Epona, and if she didn't like you, she would ride her horse, her mare, into your dreams at night and give you bad dreams. So that's why it's called a nightmare, because the nightmare would come and visit you and give you what we now call nightmares. So this is a video of a night terror. Okay, terrible, right? So, in the video, the mom says that it's already been going on for a half hour, and I believe it went for 2 hours total. And you notice she wasn't trying to comfort him, nothing, because that seems to make night terrors worse. So, obviously, very painful thing to watch, but it doesn't seem to bother them emotionally. They don't remember anything. Okay, so that's night terrors and nightmares. Then we have narcolepsy. This is when you fall asleep for basically no provocation. Now, strong emotions do tend to trigger narcolepsy, but beyond that, we're not sure exactly what's causing it. There seems to be a piece of the brain that isn't working appropriately and isn't producing chemicals that help to keep you awake. So feel free to laugh at this one. This one's kind of funny. He has fantastic things.
Once again, he does it. His Jones just getting himself in there, making that distance for himself, allows the ball to drop for rather than the keeper comes out and doesn't deal with it, takes it off. This ball just gets away from Raleigh, stretching for it. You can see the keeper coming out, he's trying to look over. He just needs to hand it Apnea and jumps down across.
Okay, so that was funny, but you see, he's having a good time, he's laughing, and he gets really excited because now it's his turn to bowl, and bam, he's out. So this next video is much more serious and really gives you an idea of, what it's like to have this. Alright, so that was narcolepsy. Now, insomnia is another type of troubled sleep. Have a hard time falling asleep, have a hard time staying asleep. We've talked about this a little bit before, but it's often caused by anxiety, by emotional issues, a lot of stress in your life, but it can also be caused by things like drinking caffeine too late in the day, too much sugar. It can be caused by too much electrical light stimulation, meaning fluorescent lights, computer screens, cell phone screens, iPad screens, TV screens. So if you're on all of our, the gadgets that we're all on before you go to bed, then that stimulates the brain to release acetylcholine, which is, of course, that wake-up neurotransmitter. So you want to stay off of these things at least 2 hours ahead of bedtime, especially if you have insomnia. If you don't have insomnia, do whatever you want. But if you do have insomnia, be really careful about that. Sleep apnea is another troubled sleep issue, and this is when you actually stop breathing during the night. Now notice he is not breathing right now. That was the first one. Now he's not breathing again, so count how many seconds until he breathes. Okay, it's painful. That was like, I think 54 seconds or something like that of not breathing. So they stop breathing, sometimes for a long time, sometimes very short amounts of time, but their oxygen levels are dropping, obviously, and the brain panics, sends a jolt of adrenaline, which wakes them up. It may not be enough that they're aware of it, but it pulls them out of the deep sleep, wakes them up enough that they start breathing again. So people who snore are definitely at risk. That you need to have a sleep study. If you're overweight, if you're really tired, those are all risk factors. Doesn't necessarily mean you have it. If you have ever woken up in the middle of the night gasping for air, you almost definitely have it. So here is another video about sleep apnea that explains it a little bit more.
I snore?
Yeah.
See, I don't know if I snore because I don't hear myself, so.
Oh, he hears himself because sometimes it wakes him up. And he's like, baby, was I snoring? Yeah, you were snoring. It usually happens when he's on his back, and then he gets into that deep snore like it's deep. And then he stops. His chest would stop moving and everything, like he was not breathing. So I nudged him like, babe, wake up. And then he'd catch his breath. I'm like, dude, you just stopped breathing in your sleep. And I saved him.
Pam's a registered polysomnographic technician.
Poly what?
Polysomnographic means sleep study. She'll be the one putting the electrodes in.
Sleep apnea actually is a pretty common condition, which is most likely underdiagnosed and underevaluated because many people don't realize that they have it.
Well, every time I stop breathing, the next morning, he has sleep apnea. He has sleep apnea. I'm like, what is sleep apnea?
Well, sleep apnea is a condition where a person is unable to get air into their lungs when they fall asleep.
Every time the person stops breathing, they wake up. They stop breathing, they wake up.
And that exposes the body to a myriad of really adverse stresses.
And that does have consequences.
Irritability, can't focus and maintain attention.
They're unable to sleep in the same bedroom with their bed partner or spouse.
There's about a 7-fold increased risk of motor vehicle accidents.
It's linked with the obesity epidemic to being linked with cardiovascular or heart disease.
High rates of stroke, diabetes, and even mortality.
And so now we gotta fix it. Don't want to go out like that.
So, Shaq, one of the things that
I'm meeting with the sleep doctor, my main man, Dr. C. He said he wanted me to be part of his sleep study.
We arranged for an overnight recording in which we could actually find out whether Mr. O'Neill has sleep apnea.
So tonight, electrodes on the head, and they're gonna study the brain waves. Hopefully my REMs and my non-REMs. See, I read that. My rapid eye movements.
Oh, and the N is the what?
Non-rapid eye movements. So, hopefully I don't have it, but if I do have it, I know I'm working with the best people to, get it cured.
you all ready to go to sleep?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good luck with everything. We'll be here monitoring.
So the evaluation of sleep apnea is test while they're asleep. And every second of the study will be looked at. Then the physician will interpret it and make a conclusion.
To cut to the chase, you have moderate sleep apnea here.
Obstructive sleep apnea is a chronic condition which is eminently treatable.
All right, so you said there's the mask, the mouthpiece, and surgery.
Correct. The treatment of choice as of today for sleep apnea is to go ahead with nasal CPAP, the mask.
And is this forever treatment or just a 6-week thing?
We generally regard this as lifelong treatment.
Getting a mask to fit effectively is often a cardinal part of effective treatment.
You have a mask here that I can look at?
If a person is able to use the CPAP device, it works almost 100% of the time.
Oh yeah, this is pretty good. This is nice. I like it. Can I wear it to the club?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this is nice.
Okay,
I like it. I'll do it. Since I've met with Dr. C, and I've been getting at least 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep a day. I feel good. The weight is good. Got a lot of energy. The relationship is good at the house. Everything is working.